So welcome everyone to the Way of Soul Remembering podcast with Tom Llewellyn, where we give a space for people to share their spiritual journey and practices and lives and inspire us all with what they've learned. I'm really happy and privileged to have Sharon Ramel here with me today. We're going to discuss some amazing things. Sharon's a teacher in shamanism and the kind of the wonders of that tradition. So let's go into it. There's amazing things that I want to explore with Sharon today. But let's just give a space first for Sharon to share a little bit more just about herself. There'll be people watching this that have never met her before. Just a little bit about herself, the kind of work that she does, and then we'll kind of dive into things from there.
Thank you, Tom. Hi, I'm Sharon. And back in 2013, I was meditating, trying to get on with my life as one does. And Great Spirit kept on really irritating me and telling me I had to put something called the Munai key, which I had been initiated into many years before online. That is basically how I come to be with you today. And naturally, Great Spirit was wrong, right? Because that was just an insane thing to do back in 2013. Who had heard of it? Even the Shift Network were only just starting back then, and they would have 1.5 hour long telephone in with a crackly line. And it was just the host speaking for 90 minutes solid, and you had to somehow tune in and get the vibe. They actually didn't change to video until 2018, and they still are sticking with their 90 minutes, completely ignoring the entire adult education. And our attention spans have gone back at about the 5-10 minute mark. However, you can watch it on demand and slow it down. So I had learnt the Moonai key. I came to that after what could be described as a dark night of the soul. I had been divorced for many years and was violently attacked at my workplace by my ex-husband of 3 years. Really common, right? And I had actually had a warning. I'd been rowing, which was my sport, being out on the water. I'm a Cancerian. It's just lovely to be out, in the middle of winter, freezing cold on the rivers. Not that we have many big rivers here in Australia, or particularly in WA. And I got home and I had this overwhelming sense of foreboding. And I wanted to take this to work with me. This is my witch's sword. It comes from the late 1800s, ceremonial sword. And I'm like, that is ridiculous. You can't go to a medical center with something like this in your hand. I'm a remedial massage therapist at this stage with a big practice, 14 staff, all working on people crippled from car accidents, workers' comp, emotionally very distraught. So naturally, I decide now, where is it? I've got I decide instead to pack this one in my bag, because I really know that I just had this overwhelming sense that something was really wrong. And I got to work early as usual, going up the steps, getting worse, and I wanted to run from my own business. I didn't want to walk through the door. And I did, and unfortunately, I was met by a very angry man, and my arm was shattered very badly, required 7.5 hours surgery. Thank you to my dear, dear orthopedic surgeon friend who operated on me later that night. He was never charged because, of course, naturally, the police station didn't have a habit of charging men and claimed it domestic violence. And I'm like, first thing I did was forgive, forgive, forgive. Forgive myself for not listening to the messages, and forgive him for what he did so that he didn't have power. So then we're going forward a few years. I'm still, I'm in another relationship and I'm meditating. Everything's just going along swimmingly. And Great Spirit starts really bugging me about putting the Munai key online. And the Munai key was part of my healing. So after that, these people who were among the first in Australia to receive these rights had been trying to put these workshops on, and people would not sign up. And I'd signed up for all 3 sessions, all 3. It was only 3 weekends, both days, a few weeks apart. And they kept on saying, we're going to give you your money back. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I know this is going to happen. And then the day after this happens, I just was discharged from hospital, and they called me up and they're going, Sharon, we're going to do it this weekend. And I'm like, I can't drive. I've got no income, because although I had insurance to cover myself, the insurance company naturally decided it was domestic violence and it wasn't covered. So I've got no income coming in, absolutely pickled. And I trusted, and I went, no, I'm doing this. And all through the learning and the taking up of these initiations, I still don't know how money fell from the gods. It just appeared. Like, our Australian government was in the middle of the global financial crisis. Money was in my bank account. I bought a scratchy lottery ticket and there was substantial money on it. Just crazy things happened while I'm initiating into this monarchy, and I'm just kept on believing, and taking it in. I come from a matrilineal witchcraft, which is why the swords, right? But this segueing off into the Andes and to their spiritual traditions was just, and the whole other world for me, away from my upbringing. And it was just so enlivening and so enlightening for me. So you can imagine I was really horrified when Great Spirit was harassing me to put it online, because I'm like, surely Alberto Villoldo, he served a 25-year apprenticeship in the jungles. What had I done? Turned up for a few weekends and healed myself. The most ineligible person to be doing this. And I'm like, no, surely they're a great shout. Like, I've already, contacted, and I've done courses with Sandra Ingerman in the meantime. And I'm like, she should be doing something like this. Everybody, I'm thinking, not me. Anyway, the voice got louder and louder until I went, okay, December 2013, show me how, stupid as it is, and it's got to be for free. Went in, because who's going to waste money on such a ridiculous pursuit, right? As an unknown person teaching shamanism, who you were only initiated into, some 5-6 years before, you've never even been to Central and South America, for heaven's sakes. Lunacy. Opened up the laptop, this place called Udemy comes up. And I'm like, it's free. And I'm like, all my excuses and just flew out the door. And I'm still technologically illiterate. And I'm looking, and it's mostly all to do with tech. But there was one little area on religion and spirituality. There were 13 courses. I was the 14th. On very right-wing, happy clappy Christianity, and its other right-wing equivalent, Islam. 2 beautiful religions, but that was it. And when I'm typing in who I am, they are like, you are in religion and spirituality. Makes sense, right? Shamanism.
Yeah.
And I found a friend to do the image that I still use today, Kristen Palliner, and off I started. I put this course online. I was immediately attacked by people who have gone on to become friends, some of the great priestesses, priests, and shamans of the planet, telling me, how dare you, this is sacrilege. What you have done is going to come back and bite you. And I'm like, but that's a very Christian thing to say, right? Yeah, so that's how I started back in. And you'd be very surprised to know I published and didn't become an instant millionaire and couldn't, buy an island in the Bahamas and retire. I had to work hard. So
Yeah,
that's in a nutshell how I came to teach online.
there's always assumptions that we make about people, isn't there? There's the kind of
Yeah.
assumptions that we have, but then there's the reality behind, behind that. It's always, in many ways, kind of richer and more interesting than what we, what we project. And I'm really curious with your story you were talking about, your kind of your, yeah, like the trauma, the feeling of, the kind of the attack that you had from your ex partner, and the kind of the healing that you felt kind of after that. And it sounded like for you were able to kind of move into that space of healing, like fairly swiftly. But then also when you were talking about kind of like the joy that you felt when you kind of came across the teachings of the Monarchy, could you just describe a little bit more, just on a sort of somatic level, how that felt? Because it's often important for us to remember that kind of freshness, like the freshness of finding something new in your life.
I went along to a mass sound healing that was in with lots of drummers and crystal bowls and singing bowl. It was just amazing. Well, it was actually a bunch of egos, but it was nice, right? And laying there feeling all the vibrations, because I continuously work at healing myself, because I think until our last breath, we can always, there's always layers to shed. And I didn't even really, I just needed that nurturance of being in those spaces, and it goes so well with my yoga. And towards the end, these two people walked up on the stage and they just started chanting. And I was utterly, utterly mesmerized. And I'm like, these people have got something to teach
So
me.
this was
They
in
didn't have,
person. This was in
this
person,
was
an
in,
in-person
yeah, this
event.
was in person. This was in person. I didn't know what, I didn't know who they were. They were from quite some distance away from where I lived, and the city I lived in was quite divided. If you lived in the south, you didn't go north, and northerners didn't go south. They'd come from the south. And at the end, somebody thrust a pamphlet into my hand. I never take them because I'm very much reduce your use, right? It's just going to end up in landfill. And I took it, and I'm sitting in my car, and I'm reading about the 9 rights of the monarchy. And it was them. And I was just, it wasn't even a flash poster. It was just a little A2 thing of just come and learn this from us. And just like the monarchy, the words just kind of seemed, it just resonated with me, and I had to call them up first up. I'm really excited. I saw you last night, and they were like, oh, yeah, it's the healers. And they were quite, yes, it went through the rites, but just in a very matter-of-fact way. And I'm like, I'm doing this. How do I pay you? Can I come now? And it was actually over 12 months later before they got enough people together, and then only gave me 5 days notice that it was going to be starting on the Saturday after I was attacked. So, but that, just seeing them, I just knew that they were going to be my teachers. They also were heavily responsible for a lot of web smearing, she's going against everything that Alberto has taught, and how dare she, and
Oh,
rip,
really?
oh
Really?
yeah, rip. It was hilarious.
So that there was that kind of contrast in a way between what you felt you were being drawn to by spirit, but then the response to it. And it's
Yeah.
very, yeah, it's that's very, yeah, that's very interesting. But I could see on your, your facial expression that you had a kind of soul meeting, that when you were hearing the chanting, when you felt that you wanted to take this, you wanted to kind of, this was the path, or this was the teachers that you wanted to connect to. You had that kind of soul resonance, you could say.
Absolutely. They were, I've actually done a lot of learning with Alberto since, and he's a really nice man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Fabulous. And he's extremely knowledgeable.
Yeah.
But And one of the cool things about him is way back in 2015, his very early origins of the Four Seasons, uh, they actually refer people to me.
Oh, really?
And they referred people through to me all the way through to when Marcella first began teaching it online herself only a couple of years ago. And that was an amazing validation for me. And he would go and he'd be like, "Oh yeah, yeah, I know you. Yeah, I know you. You're the Udemy girl."
But
And I'm
it's like
like, "Yeah, yeah, I'm her."
it's like there
And
can be there can be this shifts in these relationships, can't there? There can be that
yeah,
initial maybe that doubt or that fear or this is sacrilegious. You shouldn't take this stuff online. It should all be in the forest. It should be in person. It should be done the old ways. But then things can change over time, you know. Things can change over time, and I think it's important uh, for us all to recognize that, yeah, we may be, well, there's external guidance, but there's also the internal spirit in a way. In a way, I always like, there's a Tibetan saying that was like, of the two witnesses, hold the principal one. And the principal one is really always your inner being in a way, you know. And if you feel called to do something, and if you're coming from the heart, which I'm sure that you are, and I can see that you are, that you're kind of, you know, if you're coming from the heart, then over time things tend to, you know, work out in an okay way, and you might even get to a point that they're really curious about your work because you become more well known online. But then it doesn't mean that, you know, if you do stuff online, of course it can come into in-person, you know, contact as well. It's not that
absolutely.
people who do stuff like you and I online, that we live within this computer reality and we're just like cyborgs walking around.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
It can go
And
both ways, you know, it can go both ways.
and of course, all spiritual traditions, be they religious or the more informal versions, all have distance healing.
Mm,
All, you know, every single one of them engage in that. Oh, you know, pray for our souls, pray for, you know, Mrs. Such and Such who's in hospital right now, and
yeah,
you know, and you see the congregations, you know, happily praying for the good of that person. So it's not like we actually do anything new when we're online, because there's always been that heartbeat between people. We've
yeah,
always
there's
been able to reach out and to work with that.
exactly,
But
exactly.
we forget.
And you know, the worlds that it can open up in terms of the people you can connect to, it can open up amazing things, you know, meeting, you know, people online that then become your very dear friends, you know, in your life, or all sorts of things can happen. One of the things that I love to do near the beginning of this podcast, Sharon, is just offer a space where we can both share any recent dreams, journeys of the spirit, lucid dreams, kind of, or experiences that just felt precious for us recently that we feel like our listeners might be curious about. So maybe if I don't know if you've got one, I have one, but you might want to. Let's see. Shall I share first? What was really
Everyone's
meaningful for
been
me is
listening to
I've
me,
just
so off you go.
I've just come back from a retreat in Wales, which is kind of close to my land. My surname's extremely Welsh. I have a very Welsh surname. And like, yeah, but I've kind of always had this sort of, you know, this connection of wanting to understand more about this sort of heritage. But in my kind of family tree, there's a lot more Irish than there is Welsh. So that where the Welsh comes in, I'm not sure. I haven't tracked that, been able to track that properly yet. But anyway, so I was on this amazing retreat where we were exploring dreams and the myths of the land, and we were exploring the kind of myths of this tradition of healing in Wales that comes down. It actually, you know, there's a site in Wales where we were visiting, and there's a wonderful lake there, and there are these kind of legends and stories of the Lady of the Lake, of the land coming and initiating healers, initiating physicians, herbalist healers, and kind of giving the wisdom, you know, giving the wisdom that's within their tradition, that's where it came from. And we were doing all of this dream work, and I had this wonderful encounter with this in the early hours of the morning. This wonderful encounter with yeah, I felt like she came through to me. I felt like she came through to me. We had this kind of telepathic communication, and it was really, she showed me things at that time that were really, really useful for me. And it was a kind of playful experience. She was kind of showing me that um, that this is something that often teachers will say, as in, you're not your thoughts, don't get overly just attached to your thoughts, don't create your identity just from the thoughts that are going around. But she showed it to me in a very beautiful kind of, with a metaphor of this world in a cave, and how our thoughts are like echoes within the cave that are kind of sparked off by a whole kind of story of past associations of feelings from the past, and then they come, and then we're like, oh my God, why am I thinking this? And we attach, and we kind of concretize it. But she was really showing me how to have it in a sort of, hold them in a lighter way. And it was incredible. And after this experience, I was in this kind of dream experience. And I thought I'd awoken from it into the kind of room where we were on retreats. But then I realized, no, I was still within this dream. And it's like she initiated me with this wonderful kind of watery healing in my hands. And I was kind of walking in the room where I was on this retreat, and I was thinking, oh my God, this is amazing. If I was able to do hands-on healing for people at this time, it would have been like incredible. And she did something to my heart as well that helped me to kind of slow down, because for me, and maybe for others as well, you know, when you start to get more stressed, there's a kind of heart thing that happens as well. It's like, you know, this kind of, you know, this sort of building up of this energy, you know, within within yourself. So I was very like appreciative of that, like the maiden, the Lady of the Lake, the Maiden of the Lake. And if people want to find out more about her or the work that we're kind of doing with her, just reach out to me. But that was very special. I felt very like humbled by that experience. Yeah.
Wow, how amazing. I don't know the lake, but of course I know the Lady of the Lake, and your story really resonated to me. I was deeply, deeply, deeply into the whole Arthurian legends way
Mm.
back, and um, had only one opportunity to visit Wales and go up Bryn Mawr, Merlin's Hill, and sit in that. And the legend said that there was a stream that flowed, and I'm looking around. This is back in the early 80s, and there was no stream. And then this stream started to flow, just the water started to trickle. And I remember feeling very wrapped up in the power and beauty of Merlin, all of the mages of the land. And I've never forgotten how utterly, utterly spiritually charged those countries are. So
Mm.
absolutely revel in learning more about you and
It
the
was
healing,
it
the
it was
mages in the
yeah, like it was amazing because it's actually I'd never been to this part of Wales before. It's within touching distance for me, like it's about 2.5 hours kind of, you know, transport drive from here. And it was a whole just like this journey for me. There was so much energy in the land, you know, in the mountains there. We were kind of walking up to this mythical place, and I felt really blessed because often, you know, people talk about we have mythical places in our own land, but sometimes we think they're quite far away or so on. But to find like a new one for me, because I have like a real connection to water. I'll put some of the names of these places on the screen and maybe a photo of me there because it was a really special thing. But there was this, yeah, this lineage of kind of you know, it kind of arose in sort of the medieval time of these Welsh herbalist healers, and this is, yeah, incredible to connect to the yeah, the Lady of the Lake there, the Maiden of the Lake. So, yeah, do you have also just a
yeah.
recent dream or anything you want to sort of share with our listeners and viewers?
So my recent one, and again, it's a scary one for me because I'm being dragged well out of my comfort. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm 66 this year. And so I was kind of toying with the fact that Udemy does not support us in the way that they used to a few years ago. I have a subscription site. It bubbles along, but you know, it's hard work. And so I'm going to myself, do I hang up my wings and just slip into retirement and swim and just, you know, enjoy my local community? And I got a thunderbolt. It felt like from the Pleiades going, you are not retiring. And I'm like, but I'm up against a brick wall here. Nothing is working on the earthly plane. And they were like, it's because you stopped talking to us. And I'm like, yeah, true. Yeah, that's true. And so then they've like just been solidly directing me to go back to vision board, to let go, to stop. I'm very so yes, if it was not for my meditation and my yoga and my shamanism, I think I'd probably be quite unpleasant to be around with because I would be too high voltage. And so yeah, so I have been told that that I've got something brand new to birth from the 5D realms. And despite my refusing to speak with my Palladian friends, sorry, Esther, for some time, I've started to reconnect with them and to go back out and to be with them each day. And so they're going, you have been lazy. Yes, we helped you pioneer what you did. And yes, we guided through the shamanic journey and everything that you've done. And then you forgot about us. And so I've been firmly directed back to spirit and back to being humble about the fact that this isn't me doing this. I'm just a conduit. You know, I simply, I'm on Goddess's payroll, just as you are.
Yeah.
And to relax into the future. And I'm told it's also very much to do with the great unfolding of what is going to be happening in the United States, because they do say that things have to completely die before out of the ashes something new can be birthed. And so I was told that my own dark night of the soul with this, that the American public are literally going to be going through that in a huge way. And that many of us are going to be there, and most likely you yourself as well, to sift through the ashes for those souls who are reaching out and are desperate to build a new way. And I don't know what that is going to be, but my whole body is tingling and all my hairs are on end. But I have to be patient and commit and find the space, and then I'm being told that I will birth it. And that seems like a big responsibility because, but that I'm told that there's more than me. There are others of us that have also been called because we need to shift it. So we've spoken for so many years, I guess, from 2012 onwards. But nothing ever happens overnight, right? That's just our legendary impatience. But they're saying that it is getting closer. And for all of us, that we have to hold the magic, hold the love, and transmute. So that was my not as direct as yours, but direct and very, very sit back in your place, Sharon, behave yourself and do the work.
I love that. I love that image, and I'm just kind of my eyes are just drawn to this little stone that we have written on it that just says the word love on it in the room that I'm in at the moment. And I think this is really, uh, yeah, this is really important that I mean, it's always been important for humanity to keep that kind of flame of love kind of alive within us at this time, because it does seem that there are kind of, yeah, like strong forces working kind of against that, but not forces that you would necessarily realize obviously are working against it, but they're kind of working against it. But at the same time, there does seem to be this kind of, I'm always amazed, and I'm curious if you are as well, that we have a tendency sometimes when we get older, we think, our best days were behind us, or in something like that. In the spiritual life, it can be a bit like that, or we tend to reflect back to our peak experiences or our peak times of life where things were flowing, things were happening, and it's like, I'm a lot younger than you, but even for me, my partner sometimes, like occasionally, will say to you, Tom, you're living like a retired person or something. You're living like you're already retired. And it's like, like my kind of my I feel like maybe that, like I put my flaming spiritual soul sword on the wall and it's hanging up and it's like, yeah, but I've done a lot of good work in the past. I've helped a lot of people. I don't feel so much energy, and if I don't feel the energy within me, what can I share? What can I share to others? But then something shifts and something happens, and then it's like everything comes back alive. And it's like then suddenly you've got all of these energy resources, and then you're, well, what, all this potentiality of energy as well. And it's like, wow, where did this come from?
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
maybe it can feel like, as you said, like a bulb from the Pleiades, or like it's like this kind of re waking up. And I think that for a lot of us, it is because we've kind of stop talking to spirit in some way, or they maybe have been trying to strongly tell us something for a while that we've just not been listening to. That we've just
yeah,
been, no, 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 no.
that's right now.
you know After the age of 40, don't need to I am alone. And I was calling out to you before, and you weren't speaking to me, so why should I listen now? But, or, and it's like, if and it's just like following those inner, however we refer to it, those inner, like the nudges of the
Mm,
spirit in some way. And if the spirit have said to us things 5 years ago that we've still not enacted, we
yeah,
can't keep on asking, because it's like we said, we've already told you,
yeah,
but it's
we've
like
told you.
we've told you. But it's just, and it's not like we're doing everything wrong. It's
No,
just that sometimes we're doing too much of one thing and neglecting really other important parts of the mandala. I think
yeah.
that's an important thing,
Uh,
um, important thing
And
to
don't you think
recognize.
it's so easy for us to get distracted today? So, particularly because we do work online. So we work essentially alone. And it's so easy to get tugged, particularly by social media, by what the latest guru has said we should be doing. And so we go, yes, and we go headlong in and we produce all of the illustrations, and so we pick up a platform, Instagram or whatever, and we just blitz it, and we're going berserk thinking we're doing the right thing, and we are, but we're not, because we're too often fragmenting our energy into too many different parts, and then then we have to sit back and go, not too sure what that was about, but here I am. I'm over it and I'm here. Oh, and I still have to put an Instagram post up because it brings that trickle of income in, that whole dependence thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
And we get caught in that.
yeah, and just to say, absolutely, both Sharon and I are really open to working with people in other ways off the Udemy, just the courses. It's funny you say Udemy. I always said Udemy before, because I always thought of University of You. But anyway,
Ah,
it doesn't matter that much. It doesn't.
it was you and me. It was actually you and me.
You and me. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
You and me.
yeah.
But yeah, so whatever platform Sharon and I from, reach out to us. Reach out to us for the mentoring Sharon's doing, or about the coaching or the retreats that I'm doing. And there's a lot of other things going on for people to connect to, as well as the amazing courses that we've got on Udemy. Um, so we've actually covered some of the things that I've written down here already. I was curious about the sense of, it's not. I think we've already covered. The thing that I'd written down here is like, what's the kind of the journey for people to become this kind of authority within themselves in a way, because that can be hard for people. There's also, it's not just social media. It can be your partner sometimes. It can be your parents. It can be your immediate community. It can be all of the things that people have told you in the past that can feel quite conflicting. I remember people saying to me things like, Tom, you need to be a teacher. You need to be a teacher. It's in your astrological chart. You need to go out there in the world, and you've got amazing. It'll slowly grow over time, because you've got a lot of Saturn in your chart. Things will move slowly. It will emerge, and you won't be satisfied unless you're kind of doing these big things in a teacher. And then other people may have said to me, Tom, I think you're built for the quiet life. I think you're built just for the quiet life, somewhere in nature, just away from people. you've got too many, like, and you can have these different things that people have told you different things. Told you, on the one side, you think, okay, I need to be a spiritual warrior. I'm out there teaching, and then this other part that can sometimes feel like, I just I'm just gonna go into therapy, like I'm just gonna go and I'm just gonna spend more time in therapy and work through these things on myself. But what I find really interesting is that just the more truthful I am, the more authentic and the less I hold a mask in a way, the more people are just receptive in a way. Because sometimes we think that if there's a conflict between how we would like them to think of us or how we think they think of us in our internal world, it's like we have this kind of like mask and we kind of pretend that things aren't what they are within us. But I find if we're just more open, then it's like we all have these different things going on. I have not met like a single teacher in any form that is, like it's just this, we have so many assumptions of, projections of these ideal teachers, these enlightened beings, these kind of people that are way more successful than us and all of these things. But the reality is just like, it's just a perfect but imperfect human being on their kind of
Yeah.
journey, on this journey through life.
Look, absolutely. I got a very early lesson on that whole perfection thing. I was co-teaching a course on ankle mobilization back in my therapy days with a very well-known teacher. And he was a physiotherapist, I was a massage therapist, and we had been working together out on elite athletes. And I was doing stuff with ankles and he was doing stuff with ankles, and he wanted to learn from me and I learned from him, and we combined this with our therapies, and then we went out and we taught our combined new therapy. Not that we registered it because we're like, nothing belongs to us, and we were teaching people, and he farted and somebody in the class was horrified, and he turned around and he went, and I F as well. And the student was like really confronted. And I said to him, don't you think we're real people? And this student looked at me and he went, no, you're not. And my co-teacher and my teacher, Damien, was just laughing, going, I've got some horrible news for you. We're real. And we're going to need, and we drink alcohol. Do you smoke? No. Do you? No, we don't smoke. And yeah, and sometimes we eat fried chips.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
just like that. It's like that's a really nice kind of illustration of that. That we're all just, yeah, these human beings on this path. We're learning as much as we're
Yeah.
teaching. Often, I mean, I learned so much just from my own spiritual, my own spiritual journey. There's never an end. There's never an end point. It's always this continual growth and continual, like subtly seeing the ways that maybe we
Mm.
held things in the past that weren't helpful, this kind of growth of perception kind of slowly over time. It's very rarely, although, the advertisers might say this, it's very rarely like a kind of, just instant enlightenment. That's like more just in the myths. It's not really ever like that for anyone really. Which
I
is why sometimes in these traditions you were talking about, it was years and years of, initiatory practices,
mm,
kind of, the development of these things. So yeah, I've got so many things that I'd love to talk to you about. One of the things that I was kind of, I'm curious about what's your kind of feeling? How do you introduce shamanic journeying to kind of new students? How do you give them a sense for it? How do you kind of introduce them to the practice of shamanic journeying?
I introduce them to the simplest way, that you've always got friends and guides. You might have grown up in various different traditions where you were told you had angels, or when you were a young person that you saw freely between the realms. And I always explained to them that up until a certain age, we do see freely into the other realms. And then slowly society, education, religions all take hold of that, and we become these sheeple people just going along on the automaton, being what the system wants us to be. And that leads to a lot of disconnect with people because they now know that they are no longer their own spiritual authority. So I'm very much, this is about you taking about your power. You know how you're not feeling really good about yourself. You've got all of these layers and layers of coats that you've put on to try to fit in. And the coats are choking you. And it's time for us to take them off. And that this is a way for you to get back to the authentic you. And that doesn't matter whether you are an executive in an oil company, a professor at the at the Sandstone University, whether you're a waitress, a truck driver, a sheep farmer. We've all had this sheeple people, as I call it, where we behave as society wants. And this leads to a great, we all feel it. We're not whole. You know, there's something. Even the people that go to the churches and they look up to the man, usually in a dress, and they've got all the incense and the lights and the whole thing happening, and they get into it for a moment, but the second they walk out the door, nothing has changed. And interestingly, I have a lot of respect for the Dalai Lama, and I went to see him the last time he was visiting. Big stadium, 12,000 people, all completely very, very zen, very beautiful, loved listening to him. And he said, now you are going to go home. And he said, for most of you, before you leave the car park, you will have forgotten everything that you felt here. And he was absolutely correct. And it's those kinds of experiences, seeing people in the churches giving their power away to the master of ceremonies, and the Dalai Lama inviting us all in to bow at his altar and drink in his beautiful wisdom. And then afterwards, it's gone. And so for me, when I'm teaching them, it's like, this is how to come home to you, to your wisdom. The wisdom you seek is in your heart. It knows no matter how calcified it is, no matter how hard you have shut yourself off and made yourself bitter or angry or tearful or the opposite, crazy, no matter how many habits you've taken up, both good and bad, you need to get back to purity. We need to strip and strip, and that stripping never, ever leaves us until our last breath. I don't start talking to them about death first up because that's too scary. But that's basically how I introduce it. And I invite them, fake it until you make it. So often in Celtic shamanism, in a lot of the Asian forms of shamanism, and the Scandinavian, I'm lucky I'm married to a Swede, so I get to play up there a fair bit. You often just step into the other worlds through a waking meditative experience. So all your senses, whereas the Andean tradition, which was what really attracted me to it, was actually the three worlds, the upper, middle, and lower worlds. And although we do meet power animals in the upper world and angels down in the lower worlds, for me, where I was emotionally at that stage, that little bit of separation made it easier for me to come back into a deeper, a more meaningful thing with spirit. So I teach them to initially the lower world. Come on, what was an animal? A power animal. Well, what the hell's a power animal? Okay, did you have an imaginary dog or a bear? Oh yeah, I had a wolf. Or yes, I had a mountain goat. Or yeah, okay, go with the mountain goat. That's your power animal for now, right? And it's very much a meditative experience, but with drumming, rattles, and a little bit of guidance. And I teach them to do it safely. And that whole thing of taking the guardians with you, of bowing to the creator, however you see creator, as a female deity, as a male deity, as a combination, as a great big blob, it doesn't matter. But there are entities out there that are not safe. So I always teach them the safety aspect. Make sure you've got your guardians with you. Bow to whatever spiritual authority resonates with your heart. And physically, let's step in. I guide them to step in. And there is talking through it, because for many of them, it's scary, it's new, they're not sure. You're asking them to literally spiral into infinity. You know, that beautiful yogic space, that pause in between our breath, where we are nothing, where we are genuinely open. And then our breath begins again. So that is how I take it, yeah, in a nutshell.
I love that, Sharon. I love what I was feeling. I was feeling the response in my heart from when you were talking. That sense of yeah, letting go of the layers that surround our being, but at the same time coming to the heart in a way. So it's not like a completely corrosive path where we're just left nothing. Like completely not. We find ourselves through the path in some in a mysterious way that can be different than what we expected. But yeah, we recognize what feels real. We recognize, I think, as humans, what feels more real, what where we feel more alive and more sensitive, not just to the spirit world, but also just to ourselves, to the people around us. We recognize, we're totally aware. We go outside, and suddenly everything seems brighter, or everything feels more alive, or our senses open up. Our sense of smell or taste is so much more vivid, or our hearing, or these kind of things. It's amazing. I mean, one thing that I'm always kind of curious about, and this kind of partly, I sort of personally resonate with this as well, is that, we're all built in different ways. And sometimes when people hear about shamanic journey reports, it can sound very like visionary and very visual, and very much like the person's kind of sort of transporting themselves, journeying into this other realm, having all these experiences and coming back. And sometimes people that will come to my classes, and I have this to some extent as well, is that they don't necessarily, that they may experience things, but it may not be in a very sort of visual way. It may be in other senses, their other senses are experiencing it, because some of us experience things more easily in a way just through their sort of tactile sensations, or in a more just in the body, in the somatic way. And some people, if you say to them, sit down and visualize or imagine a tree, a brightly vivid tree, for some people, it'll be easier just to connect to that image. For other people, they'll just say, I'm just seeing darkness, Tom. Like, I'm not seeing like what you're asking me. So I'm very curious about that the kind of, like the journey and the assumptions, the journey and the assumptions we might have about these things. Because I know, like, some very well known, some extremely well known kind of shamanic teachers, and I had all these assumptions about what they were experiencing. And I asked them, and one of them said to me, I don't see anything when I journey. I don't see anything. But or that I'm like a bat, so I don't see but I sense. And I sense what's happening, and I feel it, and then I sort of come back and I interpret what I felt, and then I explain it in visual terms to the clients that I'm working with, but they're not seeing it. They're not having that. So I was very curious about that, because I just assumed, that they were having all these experiences. It was entering into this multi-dimensional world, but that's not what her experience was. And I'm curious. I'm curious about that, because I think that it's important in terms of becoming our own spiritual authority in a balanced, healthy way, not in an complete egomaniac way, but like in a balanced, healthy way, where we're giving and also receiving. That we do honor the gifts of the spirit in a way, because we're all kind of uniquely configured. Do you know what I mean? We're all uniquely configured in terms of how we relate to these things.
And you touched on something very important, because we are such visual people. We expect everything to be visual for us.
Oh.
And again, we've let go of communicating and listening to our other senses. And so I place anybody that's been with me be it in person or online, knows I place a huge importance on exploring our other senses and feeling with our other senses, and and tasting with our fingers, and hearing with our eyes. Hearing with our eyes, and just exploring words and how they feel to all of the other senses, because we've overdeveloped one. It might be a metaphor, and commonly for me, it's very metaphor orientated, and it doesn't make any sense when it's on its own. But then when you plot it out in a visual diary, and you're like, oh, okay, oh, it makes absolute sense.
Yeah.
But not necessarily when you're there. And again, you touched on the blackness. See, I love blackness because I love infinity. But I also like the light and things like that. But I just love the void of infinity. But a lot of people, darkness scares them. And again, that's another problem of our society. We are so overlit, particularly when we live in a city. We've got light spill everywhere. And we're afraid of the dark, and we've been taught to be afraid of the dark ever since that great marketing thing in the United States, that if you don't have our electric lights, you won't be safe. And that was the origins of us feeling then completely unsafe in the darker realms,
Yeah,
in a
absolutely.
way.
I followed this teacher. I do follow him, called Peter Kingsley, and
Oh,
he
yes.
was really encouraging the sense of the kind of the descent before the ascent, the descent before the ascent, and like the descent into the depths of our psyche, into our shadow selves, into the underworld, before the
Yeah.
ascension, as it were, because maybe as a culture we're a bit overly uh, we're quite heady as a modern culture, and we've ascended,
Yeah,
but
too
without
much.
necessarily,
Without.
really kind of gone into the underworld stuff of our own issues, as it were. And I was very struck by that. So when I journey, I often, when I journey through journeys to spirit, out of body experiences, lucid dreams, however I'm doing it, I do often descend at the moment down into the underworld. And it's not necessarily, we have such we have cultural associations about going under the earth. It seems to be a place of darkness. And there was a time, that people were told that the good spirits are up here, the bad spirits are down here. And
Mhm.
this is a strong thing, within our culture. And I'm not saying, of course, I agree with what you were saying before. There are these bad entities or spirits. You encounter them, and I've definitely encountered them. But I've also journeyed to the underworld, and it's not been cold, it's been warm, and it's been
Yeah.
welcoming, and it's been absolutely incredible,
Mag-
like
yeah.
beings, especially when I've kind of had the intention of meeting, beings like Persephone, of the
Mhm.
Eleusinian kind of mysteries, beings that are kind of, it's a bit like, um, sort of guided, or a safer way to journey, put it that way, when you're reaching out to a well-known figure from of a tradition. Because that's another thing with these kind of, it's good to be open, and sometimes it's good just to be open to whatever you experience in these realms, but then it's equally important sometimes to have a particular focus in terms of what you're looking to explore
Yeah.
or experience. So there's amazing things happening for us. But again, it was kind of interesting for me because I was getting into this Peter Kingsley things, and this kind of the sense of the descent, or what you could call the catabasis before the anabasis of the ascent, if I pronounced that right. And but then I had this other lucid dream, and in this other lucid dream, uh, I was walking along, and on the side of this wall was written this script, and it said, Tom, you have not needed to visit the underworld for 104,000 years, and you are a master of light. You are a master of light, Tom. But again, it's like, different information. We choose we choose what's within our own kind of inner being, as such. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, so yeah, so we're kind of. I don't want to make this chat too kind of complex with too much information. So one thing, it might be nice for you, Sharon, just to lead something like a meditative practice, if you're open to that. Kind of, we could kind of go into like a meditative practice if you're willing to
Yeah,
lead that.
I've got my
Um,
beautiful little sheepdog here, Greta. So if you see her wandering around, she's constantly, aren't you beautiful?
And there was something I was really struck about when you said the word kind of, the spiral into infinity. I was very struck by that. So I don't know if that's a kind of a sort of
Hmm.
theme or a way into it. So maybe the best thing to do is that we can let people know how to reach out to us, and then maybe we can just go into the guided meditation and let's just see how long it goes, and then that will be the kind of the end. But I really hope that Sharon and I can chat again. I really loved it. So maybe you can do this again at some point. But yeah, if you want to reach out to me, it's soulremember.com. Got all of these courses on Udemy. Udemy, I'm running a lot of in-person events where I live in the UK, retreats. We can do coaching, one-to-one work on lucid dreaming, out-of-body experiences, any of the topics that you find in the Udemy courses, you can reach out to me for coaching about. But yeah, how can people best sort of reach out to you at the moment, Sharon?
Just Google me. Just Google Sharon Ramel. I'm all over the place, and you'll simply find what you need.
Do please, yeah, subscribe to my YouTube channel as well, people out there. I need to say this more often. Subscribe, please. I'm doing a lot of these podcasts at the moment to serve all of us. So, yeah, would you like to just kind of guide us into something, Sharon?
That's because how perfect we are at the Cancer full moon. So welcome the moon into your hearts. Place your left hand over your heart if you wish, and your right hand over. And inhale, receiving your breath from the universe because we don't wish to take anything. Pause and exhale. Let that breath go. Inhale, receiving your breath. And let it go. Inhaling, receiving your breath. And let it go. Inhale as we open to the dance, as we open to the joy of communicating with the God, Goddess energies of all of the realms. And let your breath go. Inhaling, opening up your heart center and allowing your movements to become free and flowing. So if you want your arms to move, if your body to move, just allow it, whatever that is for you. Feeling the Cancer full moon energy. Witness the moon bowing in love to you, simply radiating its light because it doesn't send it, it just radiates for you. Inhaling, feeling the energy filtering down, flooding every pore of your being. Inhaling. And because we are spirit here in form on this earth, feel your feet on the ground, connecting with this beautiful energy pouring through every cell of your sacred being. Receiving your breath, feeling the energy of our Earth Mother coming up into your being, and feel its energy flowing through every fiber of your being effortlessly. Heaven and earth, as above, so below, as within, receiving your breath. Feel the lightness of your cells, all enlivened with light energy, both from the moon and our Earth Mother. Inhaling, now feel the energy spiraling from your feet, getting wider and wider and opening you up to the universe. Feel the lightness out there. And let yourself go. Let your body float. Let it take off and feel the beauty of being in the spiral. Feel it filtering, feel it swirling. Feel the spiral. And the energy from the spiral, which is also fueling you. Be curious about this energy. Sense your oneness with God, Goddess, all of creation and all living beings, for we are one heartbeat, one breath. Feel that connection. In our spiral, we are safe, we are floating, we are flowing with all of life. Feel if there is a star with information for you. And if there is, direct your heart and simply allow the light of that star to come through your spiral that you are in. Simply allow it to give whatever you seek or whatever you need. Feel the smile in your heart. Feel the smile throughout every cell of your being. Look to your star and allow it to beam directly through to your third eye and your heart and your sacral center. Similar to a fire ceremony, draw some of that light down into your belly, through the spiral. Just assist the star's light through to your belly, amplified in the spiral. Draw it into your heart, into your third eye. Bow your head and thank the star for its light. Turn to witness the majesty of the full moon, flooding your spiral with its light. Thank the full moon for its light that is in every cell of your being. Slowly start to wind your spiral down. Feel yourself floating back down as you feel our Mother Earth reaching up, holding the front of your feet, helping you gently back down to ground on her sweet sacred earth. Thank our Earth Mother for grounding us. Slowly allow your spiral to come down and settle around your being, flat on our Earth Mother. Place your hand over your heart. Left hand down, right hand over it, all be in Anjali Mudra, prayer position. Start to wriggle your fingers and toes. Roll your shoulders back. And when you are ready, open your eyes to a new reality. Aho.